Welcome back, Cubs. Direwolf here. Today I'll be taking on a horrible, disgusting, vile troll by the name of Fisty Splinters.
Hi there everyone, it's Kristi.
Her face is truly vomit-inducing. Other than being a man-eating troll, she values herself as a bit of a intellectual feminist, which I know sounds like an oxymoron, but she uses the title non-ironically. She holds a lot of the extreme feminist views, such as the wage gap, toxic masculinity, and rape culture. But faced with a debate such as the one between herself and Sargon of Akkad, she refuses to debate the extreme positions that she holds that she has published papers on, but instead talks about the defensible position of egalitarian views of feminism. If you bring up the misandrist, man-hating, and factually incorrect statements from the feminist movement, she will distance herself and say, those are statements from another feminist, not from me. I don't need to defend them, when they are actually beliefs that she does hold and has made statements to in the past. At the same time, she claims that others should debate the most robust feminist arguments when they address her. But when she engages with anti-feminists like Sargon of Akkad, instead of debating on substance, she debated on the correct use of sarcasm.
This Washington Post article about men's attitudes towards women in India. The article prominently displayed the quote, "Women are not going to be beaten now without reason." To which Sargon directly replied, "Love the caption, totally agree. If you're going to beat a woman, make sure you have a good reason."
So obviously that's hilarious, and in context it's obviously sarcasm. And it also looked really bad for Kristi, who values herself as a feminist, to have that embarrassing quote in her tweet. So embarrassing, in fact, that she produced 2 videos trying to misrepresent Sargon of Akkad's statement to take the focus off of her and onto him. After her first video, her own feminist fans pointed out to her that it was only sarcasm and that she had misrepresented his statement. So she produced this second, desperate and hysterical video trying to explain how Sargon was not being sarcastic.
I uploaded a video where I discussed a tweet I had received from Carl Benjamin, also known as Sargon of Akkad, in response to an article I had shared from the Washington Post website. In response, a lot of people have claimed that Sargon was using sarcasm in the tweet. I'm going to demonstrate here that Sargon, based on the words in his tweet, does not communicate sarcasm at all. Given that he made no effort to indicate his comments were sarcasm, a plain reading of the text is completely valid. I am interpreting his words at face value because nothing in them indicates otherwise. I contend that those of you who are defending the tweet as being written as sarcasm are imputing your own views on the text without any supporting evidence. You are adding sarcasm to the tweet. You are not inferring sarcasm from it. If Carl intended the tweet to be taken as sarcasm, then he failed as a writer in that regard.
Or perhaps you failed by intentionally misleading your audience by taking away the context in which the statement was made. You should know this because you've already preached to your audience about the dishonesty of misrepresenting someone's argument intentionally.
It doesn't take much intellectual effort to misunderstand or misrepresent an idea. But it does take a certain disregard for research, the truth, logic, and reason when you share a video or tweet that misinforms or misleads others.
Your hypocrisy is astounding. And to add to her intellectual dishonesty, she will mute, block, or delete any comment from someone who gives a counter-argument, even in a respectful manner. She doesn't want anyone to give any counter-argument against her claims, because she doesn't want a discussion or a debate. She doesn't want anyone to counter her claims or do a peer review. She only wants her sycophants to reinforce her claims. So, in summary of my introduction of this troll, Fisty Splinters, I see her as a smug, manipulative, hypocritical, fake academic who sells poor research and lies as fact. The purpose of today's video is to respond to one of her more recent videos on the topic of toxic masculinity. I'll use it as a case study to show how she uses poorly conceived studies as a basis for her conclusion, and how she misrepresents the value, the completeness, and the meaning of the data from the study. I will be playing some portions of her original video and my responses, and from those 2 things, you should get a good overall view of what the study was about and what was wrong with the study. However, if you want to have a full understanding of all aspects of the study, I have linked her video video and the original study in the description of this video. I studied both sources as well as the other studies that are mentioned in the study that she was responding to in preparation for this video. Several of these studies, as well as other sources of information that I studied in preparation for this topic, will all be linked in the description of this video. With all that said, hit it, Fisty.
A recent article presents yet more evidence that certain aspects of Western notions of what it means to be a man and masculine result in negative outcomes for men and women.
This study asked the question, do some or any of the masculine norms in the West have a negative impact on men's mental health? Similar studies in the past have come to a variety of different conclusions. One study, as recent as 2012, came to the conclusion that masculine norms in the West had a positive impact on men's mental health, while other studies concluded that the majority of Western norms were positive towards men's mental health, but some aspects were not. One reason why there's different conclusions in these different studies is they differed in how they defined Western masculinity norms. One of the most pivotal parts of the study is how they defined what is masculinity in the West. How you define it will drastically change the outcome of the study. This study used a survey-style data collection tool called CMNI 94. I'll let Kristi explain it.
The Conformity to Masculine Norms Inventory 94, CMNI 94, which was developed to measure individuals' adherence to masculine norms, encompasses 11 subscales, corresponding to 11 distinct dimensions of masculine norms: winning, emotional control, risk-taking, violence, dominance, playboy, self-reliance, primacy of work, power over women, disdain for homosexuals, and pursuit of status.
Nearly all the problems with the study stem from this measurement tool and that metric. Problem number 1. CMNI was created by 9 individuals and their opinions of what are masculine norms, 5 of which were men, 4 of which were women. If when you were listening to that list, you were thinking to yourself, that's not what I think it means to be a man, you'd be like many people who were not those 9 people who judged what masculinity is in the United States. And then, why were they 4 women who were judging it? Problem number 2. 2 of the metrics that you used to measure were negative personality aspects that are not, in most people's mind, what is to be a man. These 2 were disdain for homosexuals and power over women. Let's take first disdain for homosexuals. There is a large part of the country, I'd say the majority of people now in our current culture, who see themselves as manly, who do not hate homosexuals. However, there's also lots of women who do have a disdain for homosexuals. It is not a manly trait. I don't think in our culture it is determined that you are more manly the more you hate gays. If a woman says she doesn't like homosexuality, do you say, wow, that's a really manly thing for you to say? And second, power over women. There's also lots of women who want to have power over men, kind of like fisty splinters. Is that an example of toxic femininity? I also disagree that the majority of our culture think that men are more manly when they are dominating or having control over women. I think this metric is outdated, and I think the reason why it's outdated is because the CMNI was created 20 years ago. So that's to say that your measurement tool is outdated and not representative of the entire populace, because there's no way that 5 men and 9 people total can represent all the different cultures in America, because there's so many different subcultures in the total culture that it is impossible. And the study itself showed that this measurement tool produced different results based on the ethnicity of the people being measured. So in addition to your tool being flawed in its conception, its utilization is also flawed. Number 3, this study only polled 19,500 people, which is not large enough of a number to get definite trends. If you compare this to the population of the United States alone, it is way too small of a number to be representative. And since you're trying to compare this to all of Western society, which is a much larger population, which you are, it is not representative in the least. Flaw number 4 with your study. You're also not studying the impact of not having these traits. It's one thing to measure the effect of someone who is too independent and doesn't seek any help, but you're not measuring what if they were not independent at all and they always sought help. How would that help their confidence? How would that help them do well in life? From my perspective as a soldier, if someone joins the military and they don't have the capacity for violence, they're not aggressive, competitive, and independent, they're not going to do well. Those are traits required to be a warrior, and men are the warrior of our race. Those are traits required by either design, evolution, and necessity. And not having these traits will result in more pain and more suffering for the individual. I've seen soldiers under torture. I've seen the ones that cower crying in the corner. I've seen the ones that pick themselves up, smile, and ask for more. You can't can't say something is bad if you don't know what the alternative would be, or if you can't measure the negative effect of the alternative situation for that person. And for my fifth and final point, you are making a moral judgment on the current state, but you are not shown an example of non-toxic masculinity. You need to define the end terms. What would this non-toxic masculinity look like? Would it be femininity? Because you're also not measuring what toxic femininity would look like. You're not measuring the impact of femininity on men or women. And if you did do a study on toxic femininity, would you use a metric that was made 20 years ago by 5 women and 4 men? Would you use the standard of the disdain for homosexuals, which is a belief held by many women? Would you mention the psychological effects of not being feminine? I don't think you would, and this study is flawed at its very core. And people have respectfully pointed out the flaws in your logic in the comment section of your video, and you've deleted them. You don't want the discussion. But let's get down to brass tacks. The reason why, the motive behind you covering this in the first place. I can only postulate because I cannot read the mind of a troll, but I think you don't like that the aggressive nature of man helps them to be successful. In areas you think women should be more successful, despite the fact that the general nature of men and women exists because of its benefit to our species. I'm not saying sexism does not exist. Sexism does exist, and we can fight it culturally. And I know that we have laws that prohibits sexual discrimination. But the answer is not pushing a narrative that saying being manly is bad. The answer is not to teach boys not to be boys or not to grow into men. The effect of such a narrative would be far more damaging psychologically than the so-called toxic masculinity that you are speaking of.
For instance, heterosexual men who adhere strongly to norms associated with sexism might struggle in their relationships with women, leading to poor mental health.
Sexism is not a masculine norm in the United States or the West. It is a negative personality attribute that is not shared by the majority of men. Even your own fucking flawed data shows that.
Look, you're entitled to your own opinions, but you're not entitled to your own facts. So here is a challenge for those who doubt these findings. Go and read the article I will present in this video for yourself, and try to respond to it with counter evidence from published studies if you can.
The irony of this challenge is that some of the studies referenced in the study you're referring to refute some of the claims that you are making. But the core problem is this study and many studies like it are incomplete and flawed. I don't need to prove a negative to you. You need to prove to me that being manly is bad, and then what the alternative to not being manly would be and the effects that that would have on a person. I feel your approach to this study is very non-scientific and also very misleading, which is what I come to expect from you, Fisty Splinters. You are not an academic. You are an ideologue. You gave up on the religion of Christianity to follow the religion of feminism. You throw skepticism, independent thought, and intellectual honesty to the wind so you can follow your doctrine of feminism. There's nothing wrong with being a man or being manly. However, I would love to see a study on the psychological effects of being a hideous troll. Maybe you can work on that next. Direwolf out.
Again, oh Kristi, oh she can't tell sarcasm from misogyny. She'll lead you to believe only women can be the victims, and now she's falling apart. It's hard to believe she's that dumb. That smugly look on her face, tons of hypocrisy. And if you challenge her lies, she points to her degree. What kind of school could believe she deserves a PhD? She lied again. What kind of fools would believe she says anything she means? She lied again. That ugly look on her face, mountains of doublethink. And when you prove she's been lying,
Some of you might find it odd that I made a video on Kristi Winters without mentioning the Bering saga, and how she may or may not have doxed Bering. However, I can't take a definite stance against her on this because the only evidence against her is circumstantial and hearsay. There's a lot of hearsay, and in my personal opinion, I think she did it. But I can't tell you that she did it. I can only show you what evidence is available, and that will be in the description box. She very well might be innocent. However, in my opinion, what I've seen of her is not beyond the realm of possibility from her own attitudes towards Bering. When I see how manipulative, dishonest, and vindictive she is, I could definitely see her doing it, but that's not enough evidence to say that she's done it. Her argument to deflect that Bering is only doing this to cover up or try to win favor after his copyright scandal is hilarious. None of his fans, and I think the populace in general, really hold it against him. It was an honest mistake. A mistake that when he realized it, tried to rectify far before this drama happened. He did edit the bear, but didn't do it enough. This is beside the point. Kristi Winters is not holding her other friends who've done the same thing to the same fire. If you look at her channel, you can see from all the string of videos she's made about Bering that she obviously has a vendetta against him. So did she dox Bering? It is impossible to know at this time. But what I can say is I'm highly opposed to doxing in general. Even if Kristi Winters wanted to be anonymous, I wouldn't want anyone to dox her in return for doxing Bering if she had done it. I don't want anyone to do that. So here's my message to my cubs. Cubs, I can't control you. You are your own people. You are your own wolves. But please, for my sake, do not dogpile. Do not dox. If you want to be disrespectful to someone on my behalf, please do it in the comment section of my videos. Now, if you don't do that, if you don't follow my advice, I'm not going to hold it against you, but that is my request to you guys. Thank you very much, all of you subscribers, all you cubs out there. I'm going to try to get some t-shirts out there with a cool cub, direwolf cub image on it, and I'll make it available as soon as possible. Thank you very much for watching this video all the way to the very, very end. Direwolf out for the second time.